Hello and welcome into episode 2 of the Fantasy Bumps podcast. My name is Shan Holtz and we have Nick, Lucas, and Tyler with me. If you watched the first episode, we went through our sleeper picks and who we thought were going to be big names to draft late in your season. We already had a bad bust with Jameson Williams. Tyler, do you have any comments for that pick?
I want to say my pick is aged like milk. The day after we recorded that podcast, we all saw the reports about Jameson Williams. I really had high hopes for him, but I think he's going to fall a little bit on people's lists now.
Yeah, definitely. So we've already had 2 of our 4 lists tarnished. Nick had the Morel already happened, and then Jameson Williams for Tyler. So me and Lucas have a perfect sleeper lineup left. So I'm sure one of us will eventually get cut with the terrible sleeper pick. But for episode 2 today, we are doing all division fantasy teams. We're going to do the NFC this episode, and then for the next episode, we're going to do the AFC. So Nick is going to do the North, Lucas is going to do the South, Tyler is going to do the East, and then I am left with the West. So we each made a 10-person roster with each of those divisions. So what we have is a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 flexes, a kicker, and a defense. So we have 10 spots, 4 divisions, so 40 total players today. So we're going to have Nick start us off with the North, South, East, and West. So we're going to do Nick, Lucas, Tyler, and then me. So Nick, do you want to start us off with your NFC North quarterback?
Yeah, and I feel like this should be pretty unanimous with everybody. I went with Justin Fields. He finished at quarterback 6 last year. He broke out in the middle of the year, I think. It was like week 7-ish. He had that 40-point game, and then he had another 40-point game, and everybody's like, oh, he won't keep up with this. And then he had another 40-point game. So he just kept racking up the points, racking up the rushing yards, touchdowns. He was the only person on that offense for the majority of the year. Not only did the Bears lead, as Tyler said in last episode, not only did the Bears lead the league in rushing attempts, they led in like almost all total rushing. The Bears, the reason I have Justin Fields, obviously we know all the stats, right? He's an athletic dude. He broke out last year in the middle of the year, and he has a huge setup for a major fantasy output this year. The team invested in him. They traded for DJ Moore. They got a bunch of other picks. They still have good draft picks, so they still could take somebody early that would really help Justin Fields out. And I don't really see anybody taking that spot away from him from QB1 in the NFC North. So Justin Fields is my QB to start off my team.
All right, so moving on to Lucas. Lucas, you have a very tough division. You have the Saints, the Bucks, the Panthers, and the Falcons, I believe. So you have a big roster to work with. So who did you end up selecting for your NFC South quarterback?
So first I want to say terrible luck on the draw. Worst division by far. This is going to be brutal. This team's going to be brutal. This team's not going to be close to competing with any of the other teams. And you're probably going to hear me complain a lot about my team. So with that starting off at quarterback, I have Derek Carr. There's not anybody else. Desmond Ritter, no. The Buccaneers, you got Kyle Trask or Baker Mayfield. No.
Dude, last episode you said Baker slings it. So
oh yeah,
Baker does sling it, but he slings it to the other team a lot too. Don't forget that. And then the Panthers, possibly the only close to Derek Carr could be Bryce Young, but we don't know what's going on there. So Derek Carr is really my only option.
So assuming that obviously the Panthers are going to draft a running back or a quarterback, would you be comfortable taking either of them over Derek Carr in this all division style team that we're building?
To me, I still think that I would take Derek Carr just because of the experience, but I do love rookies, and I do love the potential breakout, but it is very rare, especially within the past couple of years. You don't really see a rookie QB break out their first year. So I still think that I would definitely go with Derek Carr, but I think that Bryce Young in the future, maybe a year down the line, could definitely be the best QB in that division.
And I was reading a stat. I think the last rookie to even be in the top 12 was Justin Herbert, and then before that, it was like 10 years, like 5 or 10 years or something like that. So
Yeah, you can't really name a quarterback. Like you've got Herbert, you've got Burrow until he got hurt. Like most of the QBs sit nowadays are year one and then usually explode their second season. So that's something to look out for. But the Panthers have a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like they need a lot for Bryce Young to be able to explode like that in his second season. So I'm going to stick with Derek Carr, and this is going to be brutal.
We ride, baby. We ride.
All right, so going from what I think is the worst division in NFC to the best division, the NFC Beast. Tyler has the luxury of picking from there. So, Tyler, who do you have as your NFC East quarterback?
I will agree with you. It was a luxury trying to make this team. This team is full of all-stars. I'll tell you that much. So for my quarterback, the man under center, I'm taking Jalen Hurts. What can't this man do? He can run. He can throw. But what more could you want from a quarterback? Jalen Hurts finished at quarterback 3, and he led that Eagles offense to a Super Bowl appearance. Sadly, they lost in the Super Bowl. I was rooting for him. But
he balled out in the Super Bowl. He balled out in the Super Bowl.
Didn't he have like 300-some passing yards in the Super Bowl? And,
he scored 35 points. So
yeah,
fucking homers, man.
Master of the QB sneak at the goal line.
If you think we're homers, wait till you hear Lucas's minute about the Jets. If you haven't heard it already, go check it out.
But I mean, Jalen Hurts is so electric that they're trying to get rid of the goal line play that they would run.
That's stupid.
But
fucking homers, dude.
Go Birds, baby.
Go Birds.
But I just didn't see any other option as a number one guy in the NFC East. I mean, you have Dak, Jones, and then Sam Howell. So, I mean, I think Jalen Hurts is the best fantasy option out of the 4.
In the NFC.
Yeah, I think besides Washington, I think all 3 out of 4 could beat Lucas's Derek Carr.
I think Sam Howell's got potential to do it too. That guy was supposed to be a top 5 draft pick a couple of years ago. He had a really bad senior year at North Carolina, but he could explode. He could go back to his junior year form.
Yeah, definitely. So we could see the sweep at quarterback in the East and the South. So I'm going to wrap it up with the West. And who I have for quarterback is the Seattle Seahawks, Geno Smith.
Yes, sir.
Geno Smith finished as quarterback 5 in 2022, which we went over last episode. He's a West Virginia boy, which is, always good for this podcast. He played for a playoff team last year. No one really expected him to even do much. So the fact that they made the playoffs last year, I feel like indicates a step in the right direction. And they killed it in the draft last year. So I only expect them to be better because they're all going to be sophomores and they're going to have the experience under their belt. The one thing I like about Geno is that he can run when he needs to. He had 68 rushing attempts for 366 yards and a touchdown. The 68 attempts and the 366 yards sets him at QB 8 in both those stats. So he's within the top 10 in the rushing. So that's always good in fantasy. You always want a rushing quarterback when you can get one. But one thing about Geno, just last year, I mean, I know it was a breakout year for him last year, but if you go off last year's stats, he can also get it done in the air. He had 399 completions, which sets him at QB 6, 4,282 yards, which sets him at QB 8, and 30 touchdowns in the air, which is QB 4. So he can get it done both ways. If he needs to run, I mean, I know he's a little over 30 now, right?
32, 33, somewhere.
Yeah,
around.
so I mean, 68 rushing attempts for a 31, 32-year-old is pretty amazing. So if he can keep that going, and even if he can't, who else in this division are you going to start? Brock Purdy, maybe if the elbow thing works out.
He might not be back for week 1. We don't know yet.
Yeah, Matt Stafford. I mean, he didn't even really play last year. And then Kyler Murray's going to be setting the first couple of games. So honestly, the only real healthy quarterback was Geno Smith in this division. So. I mean, I'm not complaining, of course. QB5, you take that almost every day.
Yep.
So that wraps up the QB section of our division teams, and we're going to move to the running backs. So we have 2 running backs for each division for you. So we're going to just run through both of them per division. So, Nick, do you want to give us who you have for your RB1 and then follow it up with the RB2?
Yeah, sure. So my RB1 is Dalvin Cook. I don't really think that comes as too much of a surprise to anybody. He had a very interesting year last year. Still rushed for over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. You love to see that. Very involved in the passing game with 56 targets and 39 catches for almost 302. The interesting thing about Dalvin, though, if you look back to his 2020 year, where he completely just bursted onto the scene and he might have finished the top 3 RB, honestly. He had 16 rushing touchdowns. The past 2 years combined, he's had 14. I believe he's due for some positive touchdown regression. So I could see him getting in the end zone a little bit more. Some people are kind of off of him this year because of his age and because of the Vikings being able to draft another running back a little higher this year. Some people are scared of him. I don't think so. I think Dalvin Cook still has 1, maybe 2 more good years of fantasy relevance left at him. So he's my RB1, and I don't really think it's close in this division. And my RB2 might raise a couple eyebrows here. I'm going to go with David Montgomery. David Montgomery just switched teams, same division, new team. He has an O-line upgrade, and his quarterback won't be taking the majority of his rushing touchdowns away. I mean, we saw what Jamal Williams did behind this line. Not that Jamal Williams isn't a great running back, but he almost broke the record for most rushing touchdowns scored in a season with 17. You compare that with David Montgomery's athleticism, his speed, his ability to run the ball, his vision. He should be a very relevant and a very, very good play this year. I was very tempted to put him at my RB1, but I just couldn't because of Dalvin Cook and his explosiveness and his ceiling, so to say. And the other good thing about David Montgomery, and I don't mean this in a diss towards DeAndre Swift, but Swift is very injury prone. So Swift could go down at any week, at any time, and then that would make David Montgomery the bell cow running back for Detroit, who should be a very high-powered offense and in the end zone or around the end zone a lot. And the lines are very competitive. I said it last week or on last week's episode. You want running backs on competitive teams so that they get touches when the fourth quarter, when it matters, games on the line. He could break off a run at any point at any point in any game. So my RB1's Dalvin Cook, who finished at RB9, and David Montgomery is my RB2, who finished at RB21 last year.
I am curious on the Dalvin Cook pick. Do the trade rumors scare you?
So if he I think it's situation. I don't think the team matters. And when I say that, I mean,
right now, betting odds are Bills or Eagles.
That does scare me because then he's going to go into a share, and he's going to be down to a 60% kind of guy instead of a 70%, which is what he was at last year, I believe. If he goes to a tandem, I could easily swap. I don't really think he leaves my RB spot in here just because of the North doesn't really have strong running backs, so to say. But that would scare me in a traditional, redraft or a keeper league or a dynasty league if he were to get traded to one of those teams. That'd be very beneficial for the franchise, but not for your fantasy team.
All right, so there's the 2 RBs of the North for Nick. So moving down south, we have Lucas with his. Lucas, do you want to, give us who you have for them?
Here we go. So my RB1 is Miles Sanders. Wow. This division, man, it's just there's not a lot there. Running backs, I think Miles Sanders is going to be the RB1 in that division. Especially with the Panthers situation. You look at what Dante Foreman did after the CMC trade. You look at what CMC's done in that offense. They do favor the running backs really well. They're obviously going to have a rookie quarterback, most likely going to be Bryce Young. They're going to want to ease him into it, run the rock a lot. So Miles Sanders, I think, has the most upside in this division by far, and he's my RB1. And then my RB2 is Alvin Kamara. Now, I have him. I know a lot of people are probably wondering why he is my RB2 and not my RB1. I have him in my RB2 because his past 2 seasons he has had very bad down years. which has been very evident since Drew Brees left that his receiving numbers are way down. He doesn't get targeted nearly as much. He still scores some, but his numbers just aren't what they used to be with Brees when it was just check down central, especially in his old age. And the other thing with Alvin Kamara and him being an RB2 is you don't know if he's going to get suspended. It'd probably be a 4 to 6 game suspension, but as of right now, we have no clue what's going to happen with that. So I have him coming in at my RB2 with all of those things taking into account.
All right, so for Miles Sanders, do you have any, fear of Chuba Hubbard taking any snap shares from him?
I
Because
do
looking at
not.
Chuba Hubbard, his last 5 games, I mean, they started to feed him the rock late last season, so you don't think there's going to be any timeshare there?
I do not. They paid Miles Sanders. They brought him in. I think if they wanted Chuba Hubbard to be the back, they would have brought in more of a mid-tier running back to split with him. I don't think they would have brought in a running back of Miles Sanders' caliber. And if you really look at it, before Donta Foreman started dealing with injuries and stuff, they loved him over Chuba Hubbard. And I would take Miles Sanders over Donta Foreman. So I don't see any reason why Chuba Hubbard would take more than like a 25% snap share from Miles Sanders.
All right, fair enough. I was just trying to, pick the scraps of this NFC South for you, trying to find some sleepers in there.
Miles Sanders has been that guy whenever he's gotten the majority of the carries, the majority of the snap percentage in Philly. So, I mean, that should just translate over smoothly.
Miles Sanders is a very good running back, but I was just wondering about the snap share, All right, so moving east, we have Tyler. Who are your RB1 and 2?
Well, to start off with my RB1, I'm taking Saquon Barkley from the Giants. I don't think that's a surprise there. In PPR, he finished running back 5. And again, going back to what Jalen Hurts, why I picked Jalen Hurts, what can he do? They can put him out wide. They can put him in the slot. He can throw the ball sometimes. So, I mean, Saquon is the obvious RB1 in this situation. Nothing much needs to be said about him, but he's just amazing. He can be a little injury prone at some point, but I think he's the obvious number 1. For my running back 2, I'm taking Tony Pollard, another pass catching back. And we saw what he could do when he was sharing snaps. Now imagine what he's going to do when he's the main guy in the backfield. It's going to be crazy.
It's going to be terrifying.
Yeah, it's going to be quite
He's going to be
terrifying.
top running back this year.
Yeah, I mean, he could run up the middle. He could run outside. He could catch screens. He could be in the slot.
If Dallas does not draft a running back in the first 2 rounds, he will be top 5.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Again, like what can't Tony Pollard do? So those are my running back 1 and 2, 1 being Saquon and 2 being Tony Pollard.
And to round out to the West Coast, I have Christian McCaffrey as my RB1. I don't think there's a lot of surprise as far as the West goes for running backs. He finished RB2, and I think both standard and PPR. And a fun fact I have for him is he had the most rushing yards by a player of Irish and German descent, which I thought was pretty good. He's a potential 1.1 pick in all fantasy leagues. I mean, the dude can get it done on the ground, and he can get it done in the air. He can catch PPR monster. When he's healthy, we just know how good he is when he's healthy, honestly. I mean, that's all you can say about the guy. I mean, he just dominates every time he's out there. And to put him on that San Francisco offense almost seems unfair, not only in fantasy but in the NFL as well. They were just a Brock Purdy elbow away to, giving the Eagles a game. Good teams equal clock management. So I think they're going to be doing a lot of rushing because if they're up, there's no need to pass. So, I mean, Elijah Mitchell might get some of the snap share in the backfield, but they're gonna ride McCaffrey when they need to, and they're definitely gonna, hand it off early and often to him. And he's a golden standard for pass catching running backs, but maybe besides Austin Eckler. But I mean, he's RB2 in targets. He was RB1 in receiving yards, and he was tied for RB2 in receiving touchdowns. So if you're in a PPR, I mean, standard, draft him anyway. Regardless. but definitely in PPR. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is the go-to running back every year, and people draft him third, fourth round or third or fourth pick, even when they know he's injury prone.
I got him 3rd overall in our draft last year.
Yeah, so I mean, he goes top 5 with the injuries. So if he stays healthy, he's just too dominant. And then for the second running back, we're going back to Seattle with Kenneth Walker. He finished standard RB15 and PPR RB18. He set the longest run in 2 different collegiate programs at Wake Forest and Michigan State. So that's just a little tidbit for you. He had a breakout rookie season when he played. I know he didn't play the full season, but when he was on the field, I mean, he was the best RB in that class, I believe. And then over 1,000 rushing yards as a rookie, 9 touchdowns. I mean, that's pretty nuts for a rookie running back. A playoff team, so they're usually ahead more than they're behind. So when you're ahead, you run the ball. Like RG3 said, I forget when, but teams that are up tend to rush more than teams that are down, which is obvious. I mean, obviously you're going to run more when you're up, but I mean, RG3 dropping some knowledge on us. Rashad Penny's gone, so the backfield's going to open up for sure. The only person I think he has contention with is DJ Dallas. So, I mean, he's definitely going to outbeat him for snap shares. So I don't really see much interference with that, if that's something you're worried about. And I definitely see him getting more involved in the passing game next year. I mean, obviously he can get it down on the ground, but 35 targets for 27 catches, that's a pretty good catch rate. That's not terrible. And 165 yards. So, I mean, he catches and then he gets a couple yards after. So I can definitely see him, being more fitted for a passing style offense next year, as well as the rushing attempts that he's going to get, because he was over 1,000 yards his rookie year. So you don't really see his rushing attempts going anywhere.
Do the injuries scare you? Because Kenneth Walker, he was injured last year, but the thing is Seattle running backs the past few years have just been crushed.
Yeah, Rashad Penny is a prime example for sure.
Rashad Penny, 100%. Chris Carson, huge.
Yeah, Chris
he had
Carson.
to retire because of it. I mean, does that scare you at all? Because he did already have an injury.
Yes, it does scare me, but not to the extent where I would just pass on him. I mean, if you have him available, let's say redraft leagues, 12 teams, if he's there 3rd or 4th round, I'd pick him up. I mean, I don't see him falling much below that. I mean, even with the injuries, he is still top 20 running back in both standard and PPR. So, yes, it does, just to the fact that you might not have a running back. You could definitely get a handcuff in DJ Dallas. But as far as just absolutely skipping on Kenneth Walker in any drafts or anything, I'm not that terrified. I would definitely take a chance more than just pass him up.
What do you think with the injury possibility is too high for him?
If you're that scared of I mean, he's not like a Christian McCaffrey. Like earlier, even with the injuries that McCaffrey has, he's going top 5 regardless. You take that chance with McCaffrey. But Kenneth Walker, he's had 1 year. So if you're on the fence that much with Kenneth Walker, it wouldn't be a surprise for him to drop a little, just knowing, like you said, Seattle's history in the backfield. But like I said, me personally, if he's there 3rd or 4th round, even late 2nd, if it falls weird and like running backs go at a premium in your whatever draft you're doing, I would take Kenneth Walker personally. But if you're that scared of him, you can definitely find more talent in that tier list that he's in. So, I mean, you can wait a couple more picks and maybe get like an Aaron Jones or like a James Conner type running back. That's more, I mean, James Conner had a couple injuries and stuff, but if you're that scared of Kenneth Walker having a season-ending injury, then you could definitely wait a few picks to get someone that you're more comfortable with, for sure.
What about the possibility of Seattle spending high draft capital on a running back? Because they have a bunch of first-round picks, and looking at their team, the running back room is pretty much the smallest. So
yeah.
I don't think they'll do that, honestly.
You don't think they draft a running back?
I don't think with getting Ken Walker this past year and how good he was at Michigan State and how good he was his rookie year, I just don't see them drafting a running back higher than like the 3rd round.
Okay.
We'll
find out Thursday.
Yeah.
They have more positions of need.
I think the defensive line could use some work, and then their linebacker core is – I mean, they got Tariq Woolen and all them in the secondary, so that's not too bad. But I think Pete Carroll's going to want to work more on that front seven for the defense for sure, especially a top 10. If Jalen Carter falls, I mean, I've seen mocks where he's fallen just because of whatever off the field issues he's been having.
Yeah.
So if they fall to him, I definitely think they're going to pick one of them more. Now, do they get a running back late rounds? I could see that. Maybe a Damian Pierce type situation, get a 4th, 5th round running back and, just burst on the scene late. If Kenneth Walker does, like Lucas said, has them couple games off for injury, I mean, he might get a breakout 3rd or 4th or 5th round running back. But I see that close to none, honestly.
Okay.
So that's my take. So moving on to the wide receivers. Honestly, Nick, the NFC North kind of has some studs out wide. So do you kind of want to go over who you picked for your 1 and 2?
So I don't think wide receiver 1 should be a question at all. I mean, it's Justin Jefferson. I have in my notes, I said, come on. What else do you want? He's not by far, but he's the best receiver in the league, fantasy or football, if you want to just go that far. Was he not on watch for the Calvin Johnson record this year? Wasn't he on watch for that the last couple games until we put up
the last game he had like 100 or something left. I mean, it was close.
he had what, like 15 yards. He just didn't get it done in week 18. But I mean, if you have somebody that's attempting to break a record such as Calvin Johnson, you're not going to say no. And then my wide receiver 2 is somebody who I actually forgot about whenever I was constructing this roster, and then I was looking at my flexes, and I was like, wait a minute, he deserves to be there. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who bursted into the scene 2 years ago in the playoffs and won a lot of people championships. Not me, but he won a lot of people championships.
He won me the championship
he did?
in 21.
Okay, you picked him up? All right.
Amon-Ra gets me so hard in PPR leagues. It is just absurd. He knows how to do it.
Yes, he does. He had over 100 catches for 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns. And that was with Jared Goff kind of disappearing in some away games. He still got it done. He succeeds. He's team-proof, I believe. He succeeds even if the team is having a bad game. He's had a lot of touchdowns taken away from him by Jamal, whether that's by design or that's just pure how the football falls that game. But I think he's due for a couple more touchdowns. And he's the clear-cut number 1 wide receiver in this offense. And I don't really see anybody taking anything away from him at all. I feel like wide receiver 9, it was a quiet wide receiver 9. Was he drafted as a wide receiver 1? He had to be a wide receiver 2, right? I mean, just with 4 games of dominance, was anybody taking him as a wide receiver 1?
I don't think so, no. Not for last year.
So to go to have 4 games of dominance to being a very quiet top 10 wide receiver, I think the dominance just continues. He's going to be great this year. So the North might have been the easiest wide receiver room to make, I believe. So those are my wide receiver 1 and 2. Pretty easy.
And what sold me on Amon-Ra is him knowing every single wide receiver picked before him in the draft. When you do that type of stuff, you're a dog. Minus Josh Rosen, you're
minus Josh.
Josh Rosen kind of shit the bed whenever he did it.
Yeah.
But if you name everyone that was drafted before you, odds are is that you usually get it done on the field.
Yeah.
The thing about Amon-Ra too is he wasn't like a 2nd or 3rd round pick still. Like a lot of receivers ahead of him.
Yep.
I know.
He
can name what college they went to.
He snapped them off. He snapped them off too. It was one after another all the way till he got all the way till him.
That interview was awesome.
Yep.
Instantly sold on him after that.
Fair enough.
All right, Lucas. I guess honestly, out of all positions, I think this might be your best chance of getting some actual talent.
Yep.
So
this is definitely the deepest position, but it really isn't that deep.
for the South.
So my wide receiver 1 is obviously Mike Evans. There's not another pick there. Not even close to another pick there. Mike Evans has just been a solid receiver his whole career, 1,000-yard receiver, jump ball receiver once you get down towards the end zone. And it's just going to continue this year. no matter who his quarterback is, he's going to play well enough to where he's going to give you probably 1,100 yards and like 6 touchdowns. So he's the clear-cut number one. It's not close. And then my number 2 is actually Chris Olave. I think that he already played very well his rookie year, but I think in his second year with having Derek Carr and being the solidified wide receiver one, considering Michael Thomas doesn't know if he has a foot or not, apparently 95% of the time, I think Chris Olave is going to take a big jump in an offense that might throw the ball a lot with Kamara being out. I think that his touchdowns are going to go up. I think his yards are going to go up. I think he has potential to be a top 15 receiver. It's just telling whether or not Michael Thomas is going to play, how long he's going to play, just everything like that, how well each of them mesh with Derek Carr. But I still think that Chris Olave is the second best receiver in that division as of right now.
Yep. He's wide receiver one on the Saints. I don't think I think Michael Thomas is thrown there is being taken by Chris Olave this year. And I mean, even last year, he had a better season. So,
yeah.
Yeah, definitely the most deep part of the roster for the South. And then moving to the East, I mean, it's just 2 top 5 wide receivers. I mean, you really can't say much about that. So, Tyler, if you want to, elaborate on what you can.
I mean, there's really not much to elaborate on. My number 1's got to be A.J. Brown. I'm going with the Eagles stack with Hurts and Brown. And, I mean, it was insane what A.J. Brown was able to do last year with a quarterback who could throw a ball to him. As being a Colts fan, I'm not a big fan of Tannehill. Never was. And just seeing an offense that was able to not only build on the running game, but build on their passing game by going out and getting A.J. Brown and getting this just superstar receiver and basically just showing Tennessee, hey, this is how you use them. This is what you're supposed to do with a top-tier talent like this. I mean, it was crazy. And like I said, there's really not much to say about him. He balled out this year. I think he's going to ball out next year. And that's pretty much it on him.
Yeah.
Good summary. Good summary.
Good luck saying more on the next guy, too.
Yeah, I mean, my next guy is CD Lamb, another guy that just played insane. He played out of his mind week in and week out. He would just show why he was one of the top receivers in the league and finishing in the top 5 in PPR and top 10 in standard. Again, there's really not much to say about these guys. Like this team is pretty stacked. This team, I would love to just create a team out of all NFC East players because they have some ballers. They have some people who can come to play on Sundays and Thursdays.
The only thing that scares me about CD is the fact that they're kind of the office changes have kind of transitioned to a more run heavy offense instead of Kellen Moore. Let's see how many passing yards Dak can get and how many points we can score. But CD Lamb, he's still going to be a top 10 wide receiver. And then his number 2, the number 2 target share in the offense left in Dalton Schultz. So those targets are going to have to go somewhere. They're either going to get picked up by Tony Pollard or picked up by CD Lamb. So it's a win-win if you're building the NFC East team.
Yeah, and definitely CD Lamb, if he can figure out his drops, he could definitely be wide receiver 1. He had 49 drops last year. I mean, that's just insane. Yeah, 156 targets for 107 catches. So what would that be?
That'd be 156 for 156.
Yeah, so I mean, if he only dropped 10, that'd be 146 catches. So that's another 40 fantasy points. So
and just catches. And
PPR, just catches, and who knows how many yards and touchdowns he would have got. So if he figures out his problem, I hate watching him every Sunday because he just drops so many passes. It's insane, and they're like just normal, like at the numbers. I mean, Dak hits him right in the chest and he drops it. So, but if he definitely figures out that, I could see him being wide receiver 1 next year for sure.
All right, yeah, for sure. He stud.
Yeah, definitely. And then moving to the West Coast, I'm going to be showing another white guy love in the wide receiver position in Cooper Kupp. I mean, if you look at his 2021 season, I mean, just go off that when you're drafting. I mean, the Triple Crown winner, he had the most yards, catches, and touchdowns. He was wide receiver 23 in 2022, and he only played 9 games. So he missed 8 games. So he basically played half a season and still finished wide receiver 23. That just shows you how good he actually is when he's on the field. Stafford is most likely coming back. I don't see him retiring or anything. So once the injury, so he'll be back. And Kupp is his favorite receiver, and it's not even close. I think he might have more catches than like all the other team combined. And before injury in 2022, so during those 9 games that he played, he averaged 22.4 fantasy points per game, which would have made him the number 1 receiver again this year. So he was on pace of winning again. He was on pace to beat Justin Jefferson, which had a historic season last year.
Yes.
So that just shows you, I mean, I think Cooper Kupp's the best receiver you can pick for fantasy. I mean, he's a target monster and standard. I mean, he still gets 100+ yards a game, and he definitely gets almost a touchdown a game. So Cooper Kupp's definitely the wide receiver 1 in the NFC West. And then my wide receiver 2 is definitely more of a stat base. It's probably not going to be a fan favorite, but Tyler Lockett is my wide receiver 2. He finished wide receiver 13 in standard and PPR, both beating out DK Metcalf. And who else do I have? I mean, just all the receivers. He was the second best in that division. So stats-wise, Tyler Lockett makes sense here for the wide receiver 2. He had over 115 targets, which is very good, even though he lines up as the second in that. DK got more targets last year. But, I mean, Tyler Lockett's yards per catch just puts him above DK because every time he catches, he seems to be 20, 25 yards down the field. So he gets the big yak plays, and he gets 9 touchdowns a game. He's just the absolute model of consistency. He finished within wide receiver 15 and PPR leagues each of the last 4 seasons, and he's finished with 8 or more touchdowns in each of the last 5. So he gets it done every year. Everyone just kind of forgets about him. Nick, who you said earlier, Amon-Ra just has a quiet season. Tyler Lockett does it every year. You never hear nothing about Tyler Lockett. At least I don't.
He's one of the most slept on players in the NFL. Like in normal football and then in fantasy football. He's super slept on, and I don't know how many times he just has to keep proving himself over and over for us to be like, oh, he's actually kind of good at this whole catching the football thing.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen him go in like round 8 or 9 last year. I mean, just in other redraft leagues that I've done. I mean, it's nuts. And he's wide receiver 15 last 4 years. And he's also had 1,000 receiving yards in each of the last 4 as well. Yeah. And then just a fun fact I saw while just looking up some stats, he is extremely religious. He is a devout Christian. And I guess during his draft, like interviews and stuff, it got to the point where teams didn't even want to draft him because he would be like, he would hate how the locker rooms was and wouldn't even want to play for him. So they were worried that he would just not even play in the NFL because he was so religious. He wouldn't like locker room talks and stuff out of Kansas. So that was just a crazy fact. Yeah, so that's a little fun fact for you. So moving on to the big guys on the line, the tight ends. Starting with the North, that's a pretty good tight end there.
Yeah. Yep. TJ Hawkinson. Again, another divisional mover from the he was on the Lions and then came over to the Vikings somewhere before the trade deadline, obviously. And he just kind of picked up where he left off in Detroit. There was no lag, there was no pushback, there was no down games. I mean, he's a tight end. So tight ends can very easily, unless your name's Travis Kelce, they can very easily get lost in the game plan, especially whenever you have one of the best wide receivers in football outside. So TJ Hawkinson's great. He should be hands down the number 2 target in this offense. He almost had 1,000 yards last year, 914 on 86 catches. That's pretty good. Those are good numbers from a tight end. He finished at tight end 4. And he's the type of tight end that can win you a week. He's not he's not somebody that can. He has a pretty good floor, and he's never going to really disappoint. Every tight end again has their down games, but he also has those weak winning games where he can score 25, 30, 35 points, and 35 points out of a tight end position it's almost guaranteeing you a win if the rest of your team is at least competent enough to score their base. He's a very athletic guy. I mean, just the easy target, the easy tight end for me right here. Tight end 4, easy pick.
Yeah, definitely. And then moving to the south, I mean, it's just a barren wasteland down there. So I mean, who did you scrap out of this NFC South?
So I got Kyle Pitts.
Oh,
That's honestly the best you could do down there. Like, honestly,
I couldn't even tell you Carolina's tight end is, honestly.
good
I
luck.
don't know.
Moving to Tampa, you got Cameron Brate, who was dead last year at one point, basically. And then I do like Juwan Johnson, and I do think he's a decent sleeper tight end, but I just think with the way the Falcons were crucified for how they used Kyle Pitts this year, I don't think it'll ever happen again for how good he is and how high they drafted him. So I think he's going to be a lot more involved this year, especially with Ritter, who is still really basically a rookie QB. Tight ends are their best friends. So I think that there's going to be a lot of 5-yard hooks, drag routes thrown to Pitts. And if he can get the ball, he's going to put up points. He is just a freak athlete. So I've got Pitts here. I didn't have much of a choice.
So do you like Pitts here, or would you be more comfortable in getting a later round pick in Carolina's Hayden Hurst, who came over from Cincinnati? Would you want to get drafted earlier? Would you want to draft Pitts earlier because he's just a phenomenal athlete, like you said, and when he does get the ball, I mean, he's a top 3 tight end. Or would you rather wait later and get Hayden Hurst and maybe sub in another a flex for where you would get Pitts?
So my thing with Pitts is I don't think that he's going to go anywhere near as high as he did last year. I think that you're going to be able to get him in the 6th round probably, just because of the fact that he had such a bad season and that offense is so abysmal, and you have no clue how they're going to be with Ritter, because Ritter really didn't play well when he played. So I think that you're going to be able to get Pitts a lot later than last year. It's not going to be 3rd round pick tight end again. I think that he's going to be around the 6 to 7. Maybe if there's training camp buzz, you might see him in the 5th, but I think that you're going to be able to get him later than last year, and it's going to be really good value that late. Whereas Hayden Hurst, you're obviously going to be able to get in double-digit rounds, but
so if you're setting Kyle Pitts on the board, let's say 7th round, are you going to pick him there, or are you going to get a wide receiver 2-3 or a running back 2-3 there and wait to get Hurst, or another tight end later in the round?
I think that if you don't have a tight end and Kyle Pitts is available around 7, you have to take him.
Kyle Pitts is he's a very interesting guy. He's like Evan Ingram was whenever he was in the league, or whenever he first came in the league. Big, amazingly athletic, huge tight end prospect, and nobody's heard of him until last year. Evan Ingram disappeared, forgot how to catch the football with New York, had a couple bad seasons. Did he get traded or did he get signed to the Jags? I don't remember. Either way, he ended up in Jacksonville, and he just blew up 5-6 years later. But Kyle Pitts does have tight end 1 upside. So that's why everybody falls into the trap of Kyle Pitts every year, because they see what he can be.
He is just such there's nobody this year has a pretty stacked tight end draft when you look at Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer is just going to be a monster.
Kincaid's pretty good too. I mean, this tight end class is very good. Darnell Law. I mean, they're going to have a bunch of drafts for sure.
But just none of them compare to the athleticism as Pitts.
No.
There's not tight end prospects like this. Like I said in our last episode, my sleeper, he's like Irv Smith. He is just a freak athlete, and as long as they can get him the ball, he's going to put up points.
Yeah, and then his rookie, why the buzz was so high is his rookie season, he finished tight end number 6. So, I mean, when he's healthy, the potential is there for a top 5, top 6 finish.
And when we're looking at tight ends, we have to kind of remember, too, that anybody outside from tight end 4 and down, that can be interchangeable. Like, obviously, we got Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and George Kittle. Those are the 3 that you want. And then anybody below that, there's a huge tier break as of now. Kyle Pitts could join that tier, but for now, there's a huge tier break. And then tight end 4 through tight end 12 can be interchangeable any given year.
Yeah, definitely. What Nick said. I mean, you can basically just throw a dart at a dartboard and pick your tight end if it's not Kelce. Like, if you don't get the first couple of picks, I mean,
good luck.
Yeah, you really. I mean, the separation of points per game from 4th to 12th is just not
smaller.
It is not high enough to draft a tight end in the 2nd or 3rd round for it to be that small. When you can get somebody in, like, especially like you saw like Tyler Conklin this past year. I don't know what he ended up finishing, but like especially at the beginning of the season, he was somebody that went undrafted. He was playing like tight end 4 the first like 6 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, and I have the AFC West, and Kelsey's in that, so I have a bunch of tight end stats for you in the next episode. So you'll want to tune into that, a little precursor for you. So moving on to the East, Tyler. I mean, there's some studs in there as well at the tight end. So who would you land on?
There are some studs in the NFC East in the tight end position, but I'm going with Dallas Goedert, the Philadelphia Eagles. I feel like he's the safest pick. With Dalton Schultz leaving, Dallas leaving, Jake Ferguson, which was Shannon' sleeper last week. Commanders tight end.
I think it was Lance Thompson, maybe Logan Thomas.
Logan
Thomas.
Who got hurt last year? He's good, but he got hurt last year.
He's getting up there in
age. Bring back
too.
Jordan Reed.
Former Virginia Tech quarterback Logan Thomas.
He was a stud.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He was a quarterback.
And then the Giants with Bellinger.
I think the Giants have
Darren Waller coming in. So
they have I completely forgot about that.
Yes, I mean he's tough too. Interchangeable.
Does a healthy Waller or healthy Goddard? Remember who's throwing the ball. You got Jalen Hurts throwing to Goddard, and you got Danny Dimes throwing to Waller.
I mean, a healthy Waller was like a top 5 tight end. He was sitting at 4 or 5. But
and
the thing you have to look at with Waller too is like Danny Dimes does not have a lot of people to throw to.
His situation is like the
number 1 option in that offense.
And like advanced stats, Daniel Jones just tosses over the middle, and Darren Waller is just absurd in the middle of the field between the hashes. I think he's like top 3 or 4 in routes ran that way between the hashes, and Daniel Jones just looks over the middle, and I mean that's just a match made in heaven, especially with no receivers. I mean they have Paris Campbell, Sterling Shepard if he's healthy. Saquon out of the backfield for some screens, but I mean it's going to be Darren Waller and Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
Like if it's not Saquon.
Wandale Robinson.
And Isaiah Hodges. He caught a couple touchdowns last year. So.
Yeah, no, I completely forgot about Darren Waller going to the Giants, but I'm still going to stick with Goddard as my pick. I still feel that's the safest pick, again, with the Waller injuries and just the lack of offense that the Giants were able to put up. They still had a decent offense, but I have more faith in the Eagles offense than I do in the Giants offense. So that is why I took Dallas Goedert as my tight end.
So just to add a little bit more to the tight end pot, Dallas Goedert missed 4 or 5 games last year, I believe, and he finished at tight end 10. There's no other position where you can miss 4 or 5 games in the NFL for fantasy and still finish top 10. So again, as Shannon said, find your dartboard, get a dart, close your eyes, and throw it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, honestly, besides Kelce, the top 3 or 4, I mean, you can determine based off of just guessing. But like after the top 5 tight ends, I mean, you can just do a random name generator.
Yep.
All right. So for the West, I mean, I don't think there's much competition in this. It's going to be George Kittle. standard tight end 2, PPR tight end 3, one-time WrestleMania participant. I mean, the guy does it all. He leads all current 49ers with the most waves to the Iowa's Children's Hospital with 49. He played 49 games at Iowa, and their tradition is to wave to the Children's Hospital. So shout out Iowa for that. Finished within tight end 10 in 9 out of 15 games. So 60% of his games, he's giving you a tight end 10 performance or better, which is, I mean, for the tight end, like we were saying, for such a barren, like you never know who's going to do good in tight end. I mean, if you're going to give me a 60% chance of having a tight end 10 or better, I mean, you got to sign up for that. He's only finished below tight end 4 for the season and 2 different seasons out of 6. In 2020 and 2017, he finished tight end 20, and that was kind of his injury-riddled years. So, I mean, you can kind of excuse him for those 2 seasons. So when he's healthy, he finishes tight end 4 or better. So that's something you definitely want to look at when you're thinking about tight ends. Let's see what else I have here. Purdy seemed to favor Kittle during the end of the season. I mean, just watching the games, just kind of a bonehead sitting on the couch. It just seemed like every time Purdy was in trouble, he'd be throwing it to Kittle down like 5-10 yard slants or drags or whatever he was running. So Kittle seems to be his like safety valve. And I mean, you like safety valves at tight ends because we play PPR, and the more catches, the more points. And George Kittle is kind of a rack monster as well. I mean, if he gets the ball in open field, not a lot of people can bring him down. He's too fast for the linebackers and the edge rushers, and he's too big for the safeties and the corners. So, I mean, he's kind of a matchup nightmare as soon as he gets the ball in his hands. So, honestly, you only really need to throw your 5-yard drags to Kittle for him to get 20, 30 yards down the field before he's pushed out of bounds or if he's in the end zone. When Purdy played, he finished below tight end 15 once during that time, and that includes the playoffs as well. So I don't know how many games Purdy played, including playoffs. I think it was like 8 or 9.
He only played 2 playoff games, 2 full playoff games,
and then I don't know how many regular season, but all that he was below tight end 15 once. So I mean, pretty much a tight end 15 or better performance during all of that. So I mean, honestly, Seattle has Noah Fant. Cardinals have Zach Ertz and Trey McBride, and the Rams have Tyler Higbee. I think you could add all their points up, and it's probably not going to almost equal. I think Kittle almost has them all 3 beat. So
yeah,
I think Kittle's just an automatic pick in the West for tight end. So moving on to the flexes, we're basing this off our rosters in our league. So we're going to each have 2 flexes. We're not just going to give you 1. We're going to give you some extra picks. So we'll have an 8 total flexes for you, 2 in each division. So Nick, do you want to start us off in the North?
Yeah. So my first flex should be pretty common throughout the entire theme. It's Aaron Jones. He was great last year. Well, I wouldn't say great. He was good. He didn't seem like he was playing very good, but he finished at RB11. So if you play in a 12-man league, that's still RB1 territory. Low end, but it's still RB1 territory. I'll give you a couple of things that scare me with Aaron Jones. His whole career has been with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has been amazing. He's had an amazing career, Hall of Fame level career. Aaron Jones has not played without Aaron Rodgers for an extended amount of time, anything that we can get data from. I mean, he played the half the third quarter and the fourth quarter with Jordan Love against the Eagles. But, I mean, that's not even half a game. You can't base anything off that. He took a big step down. Everybody thought he was going to have a great year, even me. He averaged it was almost 23 points. I think it was like 22.8 points per game, PPR, when Devontae Adams was not on the field. And Devontae Adams was not on the field at all for the 49ers this year. And he didn't seem to get it done most of the games. And I don't know if that was the offense struggling without Devontae Adams. I don't know if that was Aaron Rodgers struggling. But we're not going to take out the possibility that it also could have been Aaron Jones just kind of stepping down from that tier that he's been at for the past couple years. A couple good things that I will say, a couple positive things about Aaron Jones. He's due for some positive touchdown regression. Again, just like Dalvin Cook is. He only had 2 rushing touchdowns. And I know some of those were taken from him by A.J. Dillon. But, I mean, if you compare those two, I think Aaron Jones is still the best running back in Green Bay. And they're going to split time. That's why he's at my flex and not one of my RB spots, because I don't want to. I try to avoid split running backs, even though David Montgomery and Swift are. But David Montgomery's got all the touchdown upside. Aaron Jones is somebody that I'm gonna personally stay away from when I draft this year, but he should have another relevant year and then start to decline heavy next year. Flex
So,
two. Oh,
do
go
you
ahead, sorry.
do you feel as if Aaron Jones is going to keep the backfield all year? Because I think that it's evident in the stats that first half of the season they didn't really give Dylan the ball, and then second half when they started giving the ball to him, he kind of exploded.
Yeah.
So, what's your take on that?
I think this will be, I don't want to say last year of relevance. I think this will be Aaron Jones's last year being a solid fantasy option. I feel like the next couple years, as he kind of progresses through the later years in his career, he's gonna regress. He's gonna take steps back. He's not gonna be as fast. I think AJ Dillon could win the backfield this year. Again, that's why he's at one of my flexes and not my RB1. But he's still super talented. He's been in his career effective with the ball in his hands. He had a nose for the end zone. I just don't know where that went. He has crazy touchdown upside, and he's a great receiving back. I mean, not too many. He's probably a top. If we just talk about receiving, he's probably top 5 in the NFL in running backs. I mean, obviously behind CMC, Eckler, and Saquon, he could be 4, but he's a very good receiving back. So he doesn't. This year is going to be do or die for me. If he does good this year, I'll be whatever. It's still Aaron Jones being Aaron Jones. But if he takes another step back from the 2022 season to the 2023 season, I think I'm just going to be all out on him and just kind of let the chips fall.
And are you more scared of AJ Dillon winning that backfield, or would you perhaps be more scared of a healthy DeAndre Swift taking up chunks of time in Detroit with David Montgomery?
So that's a great question, because David Montgomery, I feel right now, is the better player for fantasy. He's on a better offense. He's got a better offensive line. He's got a better quarterback. He's got better outside weapons on the offense. So he's in a better system in general. And when the lines are on the goal line or within the 10, it's not going to be DeAndre Swift that's lining up in the backfield the majority of the time. It's going to be David Montgomery. I mean, he's not replacing Jamal Williams, not saying that Jamal Williams was a better running back than David Montgomery, but he's filling that bruiser, that first down, second down running back role in Detroit. As to where Aaron Jones, I could see becoming a third down back in the Green Bay offense this year. But that switch, I don't see that switch happening soon, which is why I have Aaron Jones and not AJ Dillon, because I was all in. I was all in on AJ Dillon last year, and he just burnt me for the first 5-6 weeks. But that's more of a personal vendetta against AJ Dillon than a logical one.
Yeah, definitely. And then me and Nick are Eagles fans, so I watched every Eagles game last year. And the first game of the season, I just remember DeAndre Swift just going nuts. He had like over 107 yards. So just being a dumb average Joe, that just imprints in my brain like, oh, DeAndre Swift can't get it done when he needs to.
I feel like David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift could have very, very good fantasy relevance while splitting the backfield in Detroit compared to Aaron Jones. And I think the Detroit backfield is going to be way more effective than the Green Bay backfield is this year.
If you look at Detroit with DeAndre Swift, I mean, last year he came into the season and everybody thought he was going to be like a top 4 running back.
Yeah, I mean, he was till he got hurt. And again, we don't want people to get hurt. We hope they don't get hurt. But it's just kind of been his career so far. I mean, has he played a full 15-game season yet? Again, I don't want anybody to get hurt, but I'm just looking at numbers here and looking at what he's played healthy. But I'd still take a full healthy DeAndre Swift and a healthy Montgomery over an Aaron Jones or AJ Dillon. All right, on to my second flex. This one might surprise some people, I think. Might have expected a Christian Watson in here, but I went with DJ Moore. We've seen all these wide receivers help their quarterbacks take huge steps. Diggs and Allen, Chase and Burrow, but those two kind of came in at the same time. Brown and Hurts, those guys basically could have set records together, all of them. So I feel like DJ Moore is a hyper athletic wide receiver who just never had a quarterback that could throw him the ball. He had an awful year last year, but he finished at wide receiver 20. Like if you just followed fantasy, if you were part of any leagues, nobody wanted DJ Moore. And it wasn't because he wasn't athletic. It was because he just wasn't on a good offense with a quarterback that was competent enough to throw him the ball. So now that he has a quarterback that can pass and that's going to help the offense tremendously, he should be the number one target in the offense. And he's been good in bad offenses before. So I'd really expect him to take the bigger step to being great in a good offense this year.
Yeah, definitely. I like the move to Chicago for DJ Moore. Definitely can see some upside there.
Yeah, and the other thing with that too, with that move, is that not only does it show investment in Justin Fields, but it shows investment into DJ Moore. That, not that he wanted out of Carolina, but Chicago was like, yeah, we'll take him, and we'll make him the number one wide receiver. And if you've just watched him as a football fan, he's super athletic, hyper talented. I mean, he's gonna be the wide receiver one, and he could be a wide receiver one on the majority of NFL teams.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on to the South, the flex one, I like, but I mean the flex two, I mean you're just kind of picking at the bottom of the barrel. So.
Yep. So flex one, I got Chris Godwin.
Yes, sir.
I don't think there's really another pick here. There just really isn't. He is a top tier receiver. He is with another top tier receiver on the other side of him, Mike Evans, and there are QB questions, but I mean, you look at my options, man. I really didn't have much. So I picked him. I think that he's still going to have pretty decent fantasy relevancy. I don't think that it's going to be as good as it was this past year with whoever they have at quarterback. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as good as Mike Evans either, just because Mike Evans has that touchdown upside, and that offense, we just don't know how that Tampa offense is going to be. But I'm throwing darts out here.
So before we get off Chris Godwin, I know there were some early offseason trade rumors of either Godwin or Evans being shipped away. So since you have both of them in your lineup, if one of them were to leave Tampa Bay, how do you view that? So if Chris Godwin leaves, how do you view Mike Evans? And if Mike Evans leaves, how do you view Chris Godwin?
Well, I think obviously they gain relevance.
Yeah.
They gain way more relevancy.
What would you say their ceilings would be in terms of like a season finish based off of the quarterback, knowing it's either going to be Baker or Kyle Trask?
I think Mike Evans has top 5 potential. I think Chris Godwin has probably around a top 14 to a top 12 potential.
Okay.
Just with Mike Evans is just so big that you can just throw the ball up to him and he's going to catch it. And I think that's just a huge plus in the red zone.
Yeah, he's got stupid red zone target numbers anyway already with splitting the receiving room with Chris Godwin.
Yeah, and he might be a match made in heaven for Baker too, because he gets down the field too for as big as Mike Evans is. I mean, he can move, and so he can get them one-on-one jump balls 50 yards down the field when he's tossing. So. I mean, I definitely like Mike. If Baker starts now, I don't know about Kyle Trask's profile, how he kind of throws, but as far as Baker starting, I definitely like Mike Evans there if you're thinking about him. And then your flex 2 is your running back sleeper for this year.
Yes, it is. It is Rashad White. I'm all over this Tampa offense, and I don't know why. It's just
it's terrifying.
Can we see a Bucs Commanders NFC Championship?
Yeah.
Rashad White's just got all the potential in the world. Like I said, with the sleeper, Fournette's gone. He only played 50% of snaps, and I think it was 4 games that I had looked at. And I mean, he can catch the ball out of the backfield, which could be really beneficial if Kyle Trask starts. I talked about how Baker might not be the best because he likes to throw it downfield. But Kyle Trask would be going into his first season as a starter, so checkdowns will be key for him, just keeping him calm, cool, and collected. And there's not a running back to contest him. So anything on the goal line should be his. So I think that his touchdowns are going to be great unless they draft a running back, which I really don't think they're going to. I think, if anything, they're going to draft a quarterback because who knows what's going to happen with their quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But this, again, is just like it was either him or Tyler Algier, and I've been seeing a lot of stuff about Bijan going to the Falcons the past day. So I couldn't put Tyler Algier here because I don't know if he's going to be the starting running back in 3 days. So I went with Rachaad White. He is my sleeper, so I do believe in him. But I couldn't put him any higher than flex 2.
So for flex 2, another person I was thinking in that would be an Adam Thielen.
I did think about Adam Thielen, but I don't know. I don't know about Carolina, man.
Talent beats
Like the
production
running
in that. And flex, I think talent beats production. Rachaad White's more talented than Adam Thielen, so you almost have to. I mean, for the sake of the NFC South, for that team, you almost have to bet on talent there instead of just consistency.
I mean, maybe you could slip in the ghost of Michael Thomas. Maybe is.
Yeah, I do have Michael Thomas on my list, but you don't know.
I'm just trying to think of players.
He might play 2 games and not play the rest of the season because he has turf toe or something.
That is definitely if you're the type of person that drafts on your favorite team and they're in the NFC South, I'd suggest looking outward for sure.
Yeah. Definitely don't be a homer if you're an NFC South fan.
Yeah. But if you're an NFC East fan, I mean, you could definitely look within the division for that. And just a little fun fact and a spoiler, Tyler has 2 flexes, both receivers, and both finished better than Lucas's wide receiver 1. So just a little heads up there from the worst to the best. A little fun fact for everyone. So who is your 2 flexes in the East?
So for my first flex, I have Scary Terry McLaurin out of the Washington Commanders. This guy's got a lot of talent, and I just wish that he could get a quarterback that he could stick with. Like, I wish he had his Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase because I love watching Terry McLaurin. He'll catch anything that's anywhere close to him. It's actually insane, like, how good his hands are and just the ball control he has and his route running. And just the physicality of him. I remember last year when the Colts and Commanders played and Terry McLaurin caught that 40-yard bomb from Taylor Heineke to set Commanders up to win the game. I wasn't even mad. I was just sitting there like that's the kind of play he makes. Like, he's gonna make that play, like, no matter who you have on him. So that is why I chose Terry McLaurin as my flex 1. And for my flex 2, I was tossing around a couple people throwing up in here, but I eventually decided on Devonta Smith. For the Philadelphia Eagles.
Might as well complete the Eagles stack, huh?
Might as well complete the Eagles stack with Hurts, Brown, Goddard, and Smith.
Only thing you're missing is Rashad Penny.
That is the only thing I'm missing, but
did he really get 156 targets last year as wide receiver 2?
He broke the record. I swore he broke the record.
Oh my gosh.
AJ Brown broke the receiving yards, and I'm pretty sure Devonta Smith broke the reception record, if I'm not mistaken.
That's nuts for wide receiver 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Devonta Smith kind of reminds me of Terry McLaurin in some ways. Like, he'll just come down with anything. He'll make these insane athletic plays that you just wouldn't think he'd make. But like I said, there was a couple people that I was throwing around in there in that flex 2. One of them was Brian Robinson, Shane Holtz's sleeper last week. And if you want to learn more about Brian Robinson and his shenanigans, go on over to last week's episode where we talked about our sleeper picks. But anyway, back to Devonta Smith. Again, this guy's a maniac. This guy is crazy on the football field, and he finished wide receiver 9, which was only 3 spots away from the number 1 guy on the offense, AJ Brown, or wide receiver 10. My bad. like I said, he's just a crazy athlete. He's a crazy player. Many people said he's undersized for his position, and I think he shut a lot of people up with that last season.
Well, when you catch everything that's thrown to you, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, if you haven't heard yet, I'm an Eagles fan, so I watched all the Eagles games last year, and every time the ball got thrown his way in his radius, I was like, wow, he caught it. Didn't matter how many people were on him. Didn't matter where he was on the field. It didn't matter if he was 5 yards out of bounds. He was coming down in bounds with it, and it was mind blowing. Even as a fan, it was mind blowing.
Yeah, and he has the same amount of targets as CeeDee Lamb, which is wide receiver one of the Cowboys. So, I mean, just an absolute target monster. I mean, he had a couple more drops than CD, but honestly, you don't think Devontae's like he's pretty much catches everything. I mean, the most of his drops were double, triple teamed, getting banged in the air. And CD was just kind of, more just a drop just on a route just by himself. So he's about as sure hands as you can get having as many drops as he did. But, I mean, I definitely like him better than Brian Robinson, even though he's my sleeper. You definitely had the right pick at flex too.
Yeah. Back to McLaurin, if you really want that Jamar Chase to Burrow connection, that college connection, you know who it would be?
Who would it be?
JT Barrett.
Oh.
You know who was his backup that year? Joe Burrow.
Oh.
So it's meant to be.
It is meant to be.
I think the Commanders need to give JT Barrett a call. He's probably in the XFL or the Canadian League or something, but maybe give him a call.
Yeah. And then moving to the West, which is my division, for my first flex, it's probably a lot of people's wide receiver 2, which is DK Metcalf. He finished standard wide receiver 20 and PPR wide receiver 16. Even though he was the wide receiver 1 in the offense, that both of those finished below Tyler Lockett. He's a big body receiver. I mean, the two wide receiver 1 and 2 in Seattle is like David and Goliath. I mean, Tyler Lockett's just a little guy compared to DK Metcalf. Everyone's seen the pictures. I mean, there's no way you haven't if you're a football fan. The dude's just an absolute unit of a man. He had 141 targets, which placed him at wide receiver 11. 1,048 yards, which placed him at wide receiver 15. And the 6 touchdowns to go along with that. So between Lockett and Metcalf, I think they have, half of Geno Smith's touchdowns. So if you like one or the other more, I mean, you can't really go wrong. They finish about the same every year.
The only thing I will say about that is if you're drafting, you're going to have to pay a premium for DK because of his athleticism and his size. So you're probably going to have to draft DK in about the 3rd, maybe the late 2nd if it's a keeper league or something like that. Mm-hmm. But most drafts have him in the 3rd, and then Tyler Lockett is still falling to about the 6th or 7th round.
Yeah. So if you're going off ADP, Tyler Lockett's definitely the better price for sure.
Yes.
And then another thing about DK that I like is that he stays healthy. Every season he's played, he's never played less than 16. So he's either playing 16, which most of them was a full season before the 17-game switch.
Yep.
So, I mean, he pretty much plays a full season every season. So if you if you don't like a Kenneth Walker, is he going to be healthy? Is he not? DK's more of a almost guaranteed going to play Iron Man. So I'd like DK Metcalf as my flex 1 there. And my flex 2 is James Conner, the only Cardinal I have on my list. So I had to show Arizona some love. He's standard running back 20, PPR running back 19. He had over 1,000 all-purpose yards. He's a bigger body in the backfield. He's 6'1", 233 pounds, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He had 58 targets for 46 catches, so a very good catch rate for a running back, over 300 exact yards in the air and a touchdown. So he can run the ball towards the goal line because he's a bigger back. A lot of people thought he was going to fall off from the year before with his 15 touchdowns. Obviously, you're not going to keep that pace, but, I mean, he did pretty good. I mean, he finished with 8-9 touchdowns. Yeah. So he's very good at keeping, a decent amount of touchdowns in his back pocket for you. So he's definitely touchdown dependent, which doesn't scare you as much because if they get towards the goal line, they don't have too many red zone threats. Maybe DeAndre Hopkins, if he's ever healthy, or coming or ever plays. but they like James Conner around the goal line, and he can catch passes as well. So he's a very good flex too. Just thinking off the dome, other possible ones is D-Hop as a flex. Deebo Samuel or Ayuk, definitely you could substitute as a flex for this division. The Rams, I mean, if Cam Akers ever figures out what he's doing, he could definitely get a flex there as a running back. But I mean,
the threat of the Cardinals. So I've seen a lot of mock drafts in the past week, a lot of PFF mock drafts, and Todd McShay and all of them. And I've seen a lot of them have had the Cardinals going with Jahmyr Gibbs. So what do you think? Do you think that it's like a threat that they might take a running back? I mean, Connor's had a decently long career for a running back standing. He is kind of towards the end of his cycle as a running back. You don't really see many of them last that long, so it could be time that they draft a running back.
Yeah, definitely. If they get Gibbs, I'd be more on the cautious side with Connor. But if they're pulling like a 4th, 5th round running back out of the draft, I would probably stick with Connor just for this year.
I would even say a 2nd or a 3rd. I just think that if you draft Bijan or Gibbs,
if they get a Gibbs or the guy to UCLA, Zach
Charbonnet,
if they get someone like that type, the top 3 or 4 running backs out, I would start to be a little hesitant towards Connor, just because, like you said, he's getting a little older. I definitely see him starting at the beginning of the season, but during your playoff push or later rounds, they could flip the script and. The running back has a couple games under his belt, so he could start the back half. So if you're thinking more long-term playoff run, like you like your team, if they do get a Gibbs or a Bijan or whatever, I'd be a little hesitant. But if they draft like a 4th, 5th round running back, I'd get Connor anyway, and then just worry about that next season.
Yeah.
Okay, and then on this podcast, as always, we include kickers and defenses. So we have the kickers and defense list for you as well. So not a lot of kickers in the North, actually. This is pretty much their weakest part of their game. So do you want to,
Yeah, it's kind of surprising because, I mean, you look at the North and you got teams like obviously the Packers and the Lions who have the Packers have had a notoriously good offense. The Lions have been good recently. The Bears and the Vikings. I mean, the Vikings have been good for a while too. So you would think that the kickers would be a little bit more involved, but it's just not the case. So I picked Cairo Santos for my kicker. I basically picked him off of the projection of the Bears offense being good this year and him being in plus territory on that field goal side and field goal range. And then obviously with the extra points. The only thing that does kind of worry me with him is the amount of extra points that he did miss last year. But I mean, if you take his 5 misses and if you even put in 20 more extra point attempts, that puts him at 47 for 52. So I'll take that. But I do see the Bears offense scoring a lot more than they did last year. So that just means more points for kickers. And then we are doing defenses too, correct? Kickers and defenses back to back?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you just want to run that off.
That's fine. So my defense is the Packers defense. Again, defenses really weren't that good in the NFC North this past year, but I do like the Packers defense because they play really well at home, especially when the weather starts to get colder. They play really well at Lambeau. They have a couple of playmakers on that side of the ball, and Jair Alexander. They've got Kenny Clark on the line who's going to stuff a lot of the runs. These guys just work really well as a team at home. So I personally targeted them a lot when they were playing at home later in the season, just because I knew they always showed up. And I feel like they're going to keep showing up, and that defense is they just get it done. No matter, it really seems like they're never really in a big blowout game. Now everybody gets blown out, but doesn't really feel like that they're really ever in a big blowout that often, maybe once or twice a year. So just try not to pick them that week. But that's all definitely. I got.
All right, and Lucas, I mean, I think it's the same as it's been all show. I mean, the kicker don't look too hot, and the defense.
I think this is by far the best option, though.
Oh yeah.
Will Lutz has been a good kicker in his career. He missed a lot of field goals last year. That's the only thing that scares you. But the thing about this offense is they're going to take a leap. None of the other offenses I can even be confident are going to score a touchdown on the season.
Not
So
even one?
maybe I don't know, man. I mean,
You're pushing it.
there's some pretty bad offenses in this conference. So this is the best offense that is going to score points. So if you're going to take a kicker from this division, if you're a homer, you got to take the Saints kicker. They're going to put up points. They're at least going to get in the plus territory where Lutz can kick field goals, although he might miss them. Opportunities are better than non-opportunities. So I got him as my kicker.
And then just real quick before, I think you're missing someone in that division as a kicker. Think Atlanta.
Oh, Young
Hoku finished fifth in kickers. So I think you might want to take him instead. But other than that, like
I'm
you
sticking
said,
with it because I think the Falcons' offense is going to be horrendous.
you think
fair.
he's going to go from kicker 5 to, that? Do you think he's going to go that low?
I really do. Like their offense is just I don't think it's gonna be good. Like I don't think it's gonna be good at all. I think they're gonna be one of the worst teams in the league by far.
Yeah, definitely. They're not. Their offense is going to be horrendous.
Yeah. I mean, you got to get across the 50 to kick field goals, but like they're gonna struggle to do that.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean that's a very good point. If you're looking, if you like your attempts, you might
And
definitely.
So I have the Buccaneers as my defense. For this, I definitely didn't want to go Panthers or Falcons. Saints, I feel like could have some fantasy relevancy, but Todd Bowles, he is just a defensive mastermind. They didn't have the best season last year, but I think they're going to bounce back. I like the Buccaneers defense a lot with Levante David. He's terrifying. And I just think anything that's led by Todd Bowles defensively is just going to be amazing. So I've got them as my defense. There's not really much to say about it. This division's just been it's been terrible. It's really knocked down my fantasy confidence today.
Yeah, a lot of these defenses in the South are floating around the back half of the league. So, I mean, that's pretty much a dartboard type defense division. And then moving on to the East, the kickers here aren't the greatest compared to what the rest of the East has been. I mean, the rest of the East have been dominant. So the kicker spot's a little, and then of course the defense is going to be good. But
Yeah, so I'm taking Nick's sleeper kicker, Jake Elliott from the
I had a bunch of my
Eagles.
sleepers picked today, mainly because they were in the NFC South. But
So I mean, if you want a full breakdown on Jake Elliott and why you should draft him, I would consider checking out last week's episode and see why you should draft Jake Elliott and put him on your team. So moving on to my defense, I think this is a pretty obvious pick. I'm taking the Cowboys defense. They finished defense 2. I mean, that defense was lights out all year. With players like Micah Parsons and Diggs. I mean, in my personal opinion, Micah Parsons wearing 0, that's pretty terrifying. I'd be terrified if I was an offensive tackle in the league.
That is how many points they're going to give up this year.
Yeah. No, yeah. So I could see the sacks going up. I could see the forced fumbles going up. I could even see the picks going up because of the pressure from Micah Parsons and others on the defensive line. Again, there's really not much to say with this defense. I mean, they've been lights out all year, and I think they're going to continue to do so.
Yeah, well, the only other thing I have to say is they won't be on the field as much, according to Mike McCarthy. He, again, the whole reason he wanted to get rid of Kellen Moore is because the offense scored too quick, so the defense was always tired. So if you're going to tell me that the Cowboys defense last year was tired and they still finished that defense too, I'd love to see what a fully rested Cowboys defense can do in terms of fantasy.
Yeah, and another thing about the Cowboys defense, just watching them last year, they are always usually in shootouts. So the points they get the points, but they're so good at creating turnovers. I mean, if you look, 21 forced fumbles, 16 fumble recoveries. So pretty much if the ball hits the ground, they're going to get the ball.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Trayvon Diggs is always, floating at the interception leader. So they have
He's either
16
getting
picks.
burned or he's getting a pick.
Yeah, so you're either you're giving up 6 or you're getting a point in picks. So in fantasy, you would take that much more than real life NFL. You definitely want the picks. So Trayvon's a very good fantasy defense player for sure. And then moving on to the West for mine, there's only pretty much one kicker that I picked from this. I mean, Matt Gay is also at the LA Rams. He's also a decent pick, but Jason Myers finished kicker 4 last year. 41 for 42 on extra points. So he only missed 1 there, and he only missed 3 field goals last year, which is phenomenal. Yeah. And he is kicker 2 between 30 and 39-yard field goals. He hit 15 from that range. So, I mean, I think as far as kickers, Jason Myers is pretty much the guy you're going to pick in this division. And then going to my defense, I have the 49ers. They finished 3rd. This division is actually pretty good with defenses. The LA Rams is within the top 10, and Seattle is like 12 or 13 or something like that. And then the Cardinals are just the Cardinals. And you're not going to even look at them. Yeah, you're not going to look at them. But 3 out of 4 were in the top 15. So very good division for defenses if you need a defense. But, I mean, the 49ers are just almost the standard of defenses. I mean, D'Amico Ryan's gone. So you don't know who they're going to fill. I don't know if they picked anyone yet. But, I mean, D'Amico Ryans was a defensive mastermind last year. 44 sacks, 13 forced fumbles. 8 of those were recovered. 20 INTs is very high. So, I mean, Nick Bosa and Armstead. I'm trying to think who else is. Fred Warner's just flying around the field. He's a missile. He's just everywhere.
There were so many charts after games where quarterbacks had 1, maybe 2 passing attempts over the middle that were completed because Fred Warner is just he covers number to number on the inside part. It's impressive.
Yeah, he's very arguably the best linebacker in the league. And then the rushing, I mean, they only have so much time to throw. You're not throwing it in the middle, so you have to look almost sidelines. So, I mean, they can play their defense exactly how they need to get those 20 interceptions and all those forced fumbles and stuff. So definitely the 49ers definitely a defense to look into for next year. I think regardless of who they sign as defensive coordinator, they're going to just be studs on the field. I mean, if you just look at the lineup, I just throw them guys out there and just let them play backyard football. I mean, you don't even honestly need a defense. So that finishes up the defense. Did we miss anyone in any divisions? Do we have any honorable mentions or anything that anyone can think of?
I have 2 or 3 for the North. I'll just name them.
Yeah, if you want to go, go ahead.
I mentioned him with the flexes. I had Christian Watson as one of my honorable mentions. DeAndre Swift, and I was debating Jameson Williams pre-suspension, so I took him out, and then I went with Jordan Love as my backup quarterback on my fantasy lineup in this division. I know I could have went with Goff, Cousins, but why not Jordan Love? He's never going to play. So got Justin Fields, so I'll just stash him there for the season,
I also had a few. I threw out for my bench QB, I threw out rookie quarterback Carolina.
Nice. I like that pick. It's probably the second best quarterback as soon as he gets drafted.
Yes.
Yeah.
I threw out Tyler Algier, which is kind of going to depend on Thursday whether or not they go with Bijan or not.
Yeah.
He was a 1,000-yard rusher. I don't really know why they would use a first-round pick when they're a team that needs so much. I don't know why they would use that first-round pick on a running back when they have a running back that rushed for over 1,000 yards, and they really didn't give him a lot of carries either.
Cordero had a lot before he got injured.
Yeah, all of his yardage too pretty much came in the back half of the season. Those last couple games, he was just putting up 100 yards after 100 yards.
And then I have Michael Thomas, just because if Slant Boy plays, he's a top tier receiver. It's just he's got to play. That's a problem.
No rushing touchdown leader in there? No Jamal Williams?
Dude,
Yeah, put some respect on his name.
Yeah, come on, man.
I thought about it, but I don't know what's going to happen there. I think that he's going to have a very good season if Kamara's suspended. But
Yeah, I was about
That
to
was-
ask, what do you think
That
of
was
the
my next
suspension?
question. Yep.
yeah, I think if Kamara is suspended, that is going to be a great running back those first few weeks. Like he's going to be RB2, borderline RB1, probably. Honestly,
hmm
he might
I mean, he
score
did it.
2 rushing touchdowns a game.
Yeah, he did it whenever Swift was absent. Whenever Swift was hurt,
Mhm.
he put up. I mean, I remember him and T.J. Hawkinson combined for, I think it was 55 or 60 points that one week where Amon-Ra was out and DeAndre Swift was out. So I mean, crazy numbers.
But again, my division sucked, so try to avoid it as much
Is
as
the
you can.
AFC South any better? I don't know who's on that side.
It's
You
not.
might have-
I was just.
No,
looking
it's
at
not.
it.
It's
It's not
Houston's.
much better.
Oh,
Houston, Jacksonville, Titans.
Yeah.
and,
You should
I
have fun
mean,
with that.
Colts.
that team will definitely be better than the NFC
A little
North.
bit if
Or
Derrick
the
Henry
South,
gets,
sorry.
if Derrick Henry doesn't get
Oh,
traded.
yeah. If he gets traded, then you're picking his scraps. Tyler, do you have any honorable mentions for your NFC East?
I do. I have the aforementioned Brian Robinson, who I said could possibly go in a flex. But for some other bench players, I have Wan'Dale Robinson from the Giants. And then I have Brandon Cooks, who was signed by the Cowboys. And then for my backup quarterback, surprising to some people, I'm going with Daniel Jones. I'm going with the Wan'Dale Robinson, Daniel Jones stack if he's healthy for the week that Jalen Hurts will not be on my team because of a bye week. That is the only reason I chose him. And the rushing upside for Daniel Jones is a lot higher than Dak Prescott. I'm also not a huge fan of Dak, but
Neither am I.
I don't even think
I think the two Eagles fans on this podcast could agree with me that they're not the biggest Dak fans.
I really think after the past year, I don't even think the Cowboys fans really like him. Honestly,
Yeah.
Tyler's dad's a Cowboys fan. Let's get his input.
Yeah.
Get him on the pod.
My dad is a huge Cowboys fan. He hates Dak. He is anti-Dak. All right, then thinking of mine, the quarterback, maybe Kyler Murray when he comes back would be the second best. I mean, it's hard to pick. You don't know what's happening with Trey Lance. And then Brock Purdy's elbow just sounds like it's non-existent the way they're talking. I mean, it sounds like it's just a Gumby arm running around there. So I don't know how that situation is going to play over there. I mean, if you have to have Sam Darnold start, I'm definitely not picking him. And then Matt Stafford is just kind of a shell of what he used to be. I don't really see him, even cracking the top half of, top 15 quarterbacks next year. Running backs, Cam Akers, when he's healthy and gets the touches he needs, he can be fantasy relevant. He had the last couple of games that people remember. His last couple of games were very good. So, I mean, he'll always be in the back of people's minds and that. And then Elijah Mitchell is a very good handcuff if you get CMC. He gets a lot more touches than people thinks. Even if you're in a super deep league and you just need a flex for a week or two, I would definitely recommend picking up Mitchell just because he does get that rushing, attempts up. He gets about 10 to 12, maybe even 15 a game if they're up. He just runs the ball out. So definitely you could get him. And then wide receivers, like I said, D-Hop, Brown is another one. Rondale Moore, Lucas's sleeper last episode. He's also one that you could definitely slot in your flex, and I wouldn't bat an eye at. Tight ends, you got Tyler Higbee, you got Zach Ertz, who's always a sneaky, top 10, top 5 tight end. So, I mean, you could definitely fill in some gaps if you need to within my division. But, I mean, I definitely like who I had as my roster if you're going to pick, out of that division for sure.
Do not like mine.
Yeah, the South, both AFC and NFC is pretty rough. So,
yeah, if
sure.
you're watching this on YouTube, let us know down below who has the best team. North is me. Tyler had the East. Lucas had the just amazing South.
Don't even put me in the poll, man. Just don't even.
Okay, all right. And Shannon's had the West. So down below, let us know which division you think takes home the ship.
Yeah, and then next episode we'll be covering the other half of the league with the AFC. We're going to keep divisions, so I'll have the West. North is Nick. South is Lucas again. So he'll probably have fun with that.
Yeah.
And then East is Tyler. So tune in
We're
for the other half.
We're also going to throw out a draft recap on YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
round
going to
one
be
draft
after.
That
That's
probably
gonna be
won't be
during,
out
right?
till.
Or we'll be doing it during, but it won't be out till
Yeah,
after.
that
Yeah.
probably won't be out till about Friday or Saturday. The draft recap.
So we're actually starting to put out content. So hopefully you'll
Yeah.
stick with us while we start figuring everything out. And that's about it from us. And you guys have anything to close the show with? Or?
Thanks for watching. If
Yep.
you did,
So,
if not,
yep,
you
so
should.
tune in for episode 3. We'll do the AFC side of the NFL. And I mean, other than that, we'll see you next time.
Follow the socials.
Yeah, follow the socials. If you're listening on the audio, it'll be Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Instagram is fantasy.bums. TikTok is fantasy_bums_. Our Twitter is bums_ff, and our YouTube is fantasy bums.
Yeah, we have a
okay.
link tree on all 4 of those social media platforms.
Yes.
So if you just find one, click on that. It'll take you to the other one.
We try to make it easy for you. So
Yeah.
definitely give us a follow on all those if you can. And yeah, see you episode 3.